to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a little bit of traffic on 24, so we're going to get started. Brazen, can we take attendance, please?
Sure. President DiLisandro.
Here.
Vice President Brazington here. Secretary Stepik, not here, on his way. Treasurer Guthrie.
Here.
Trustee Donnelly.
Here.
Trustee Schaefer. Here. Trustee Bailey.
Here.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda?
None.
Okay. We have the consent agenda for August 22nd, 2017, and we also have recommendations for employment that were in everybody's packet. And we also have bills payable from August 2017 in an amount of $3,675,283.75. A motion, please. Mr. Donnelly.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support. Support, Mr. Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4, prearranged request to address the board. None? Item 5, Board of Education matters. We have Central Administrator's employment contracts and Superintendent employment contracts. There's 2 motions on the board, or 2 motions on the table. Any questions? We'll go to the motions first. Any motion? Dr. Brazington?
I move to approve the Central Administrator Employment Contracts for Samuel R. Barna, Nancy E. Latowski, Denise Sweet, and Kenneth Weaver as presented.
Support? Support, Ms. Guthrie. Discussion? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion, please. Brazington.
I move to approve the amendments to the superintendent contract as presented and to include a salary increase of 4% for the 2017-2018 school fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2018.
Support, Mr. Bailey. Discussion? I just have a quick question. We did make some verbiage changes and that went out. I just want to make sure that everybody realized that we made the last minute verbiage changes as it pertained to assigning vacation
It was
days.
vacation,
Yeah, and it was just a word here or there changed so that it was consistent with district policy. So I want to make everybody aware of that. Okay? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, Mr. Weaver.
All right, we're going to just look at some M-STEP data. The state released the scores and released the embargo last, or a week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago. I guess it might have been 2 weeks ago, though. Time flies when you have fun.
Good to hear you're still having fun, Mr. Weaver.
Yeah. All right, so you may have to kind of rubberneck a little bit and turn around a little. So the first one we're going to show you is the language arts. We'll look at the scores so that you can see those. You probably have them in your packets, so if you want to look on there, it might be a little bit easier. Just some things to highlight as we go through. We're going to just do a brief overview today. If you have specific questions, concerns, things you want me to dive in a little bit deeper, forward them to Mr. Throne, and I will then either come back with a presentation or give you specifically the data, which then can be shared with all of you. So just some things to note with the ELA data. 6th grade levels were above the county average that were, you can see them there, 4th, 6th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. Oakland County tends to be one of the top scoring districts. It's not the top 3 necessarily in all areas. I believe in ELA, it's usually in the top 10 or higher, generally on average, definitely in the top 10. And then with math, it's usually in the top, I think, 5 or 6 as well, too, and even in the top 3, generally, the third one. So to be compared to the county average is quite an accomplishment. Of course, there's a varied array of schools in the county, where Oxford kind of falls in the middle. If you were to kind of stack them up over free and reduced, which is a primary measure, Dr. Ernie Bauer from Oakland Schools just sent out his analysis of scores correlated to free and reduced, and there was a 0.96 or 0.97, something like that correlation, which, if you know anything about statistics, which I know just about that much, a 1 is like pretty close to a perfect, if not perfect, correlation kind of thing, or very strong. And so at that point, you can see there is an extremely strong correlation to demographics that never seems to be talked about a whole lot. But anyways, moving on. So all in all, being compared to the county average is pretty good, where you see 6 areas over. All grade levels are above the state averages by quite a bit. You can see that as well too. 5 grade levels were above the 2015-16 scores. That's 4th, 6th, 8th, 9th, 11th. I don't know if I put a lot of stock in this. The test changes from year to year, so you have some variance. I don't know how much the M-STEP, they really don't release a lot of statistics on that. As far as how precise and how well it measures and what's the statistical variances that it has. They really don't give you a whole lot of details on that. So I don't know, I sometimes caution to look at different cohorts or different grade levels as they come through and say, okay, in 2016 you had this many, and then 2017 you had this many. You look for general trends, and that's usually what we do with the principals and when the teachers look at the data. They look at that, and then they also look at their local assessment data and try to see where there's determinations. And we're getting better with the use of Illuminate, of getting our own local assessment data into the Illuminate system, especially at elementary level, and getting that to where we can see some comparisons. That'll be one of the things that we're continuing to get even better on at the secondary level. But anyways, you can see that 5 grade levels above the grade level that scored previously. And then there was 4th, 5th, 6th, 9th, and 10th grade cohorts proficiency either stayed the same or improved. This is like when they moved from 3rd to 4th, 4th to 5th, 5th to 6th. If you look at the data, that cohort proficiency generally just stayed around where it was at, or went up a little bit in ELA. So we're very happy with that, with the scores as far as that goes, because we put in a new writing program in 3 through 5, just my first year in the job. And in my 3rd year, we put in, which was last year, we put in a new reading program, 3 through 5. And then also last year was the first year the middle school, 6 through 8, taught the new ELA curriculum, and we got some tweaks and some follow-up to do with that. So a lot of new curriculums, and to maintain where you're at and basically hold that is pretty good. We were pretty encouraged by that. Any questions on ELA?
Just one, I have one if I could. So if I'm looking at spring 2016 Oxford schools and then spring 17, am I looking at the same class if I jump up a grade?
Yeah, so like if you look at, I don't know.
So M-STEP 6 is the one I'm interested in. M-STEP 6 2016 scores almost 9 percentage point less in spring of 2017.
In 7th grade?
Right.
Yes.
It's the only one that had a significant slip.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're correct.
Any kind of,
No.
okay.
The test, the reason why I say no so quickly is, quite honestly, the M-STEP item analysis is extremely poor. Matter of fact, when I go to Oakland Schools, and I attend a group called OPIAC, which is basically their statistic gurus. I'm way out of my realm. I sit there and my head just spins around in circles listening to them talk, and they talk a lot of statistics in that, but our district really doesn't have somebody that fits that role, so I have to go in that place. So when I'm down there and I'm listening to them and getting what they say, basically the item analysis that they give us cannot be used. It is not statistically reliable for anything. So it's pretty hard to kind of say exactly what is going on in there. And the reason is because they've gone for deeper items, but they've gone with so few items that it makes it extremely hard to really measure any particular reliability. And then they've also like grouped the areas into targets more so than specific standards, which in some ways, I mean, it's one of those things that you want to try to increase the rigor of the test. They're changing the nature of the test, so it's not just rote memorization. The meat tended to be more of that type of test, where it was yes and no, A, B, C, D answers, kind of more in the M steps, trying to get to be more, much more rigorous, much more complex in the items. So it's one of those trade-offs that you have. So, but it is one of the things, matter of fact, though, I was talking with Mrs. Beasley today. We were at Oakland Schools discussing at another conference, and we were actually discussing the 7th grade, and that we've got to kind of figure out what's kind of going on there, because this is not an isolated incident necessarily. So, thank you. Yep, good question. Great eyes there. Math, let you look at those for a second. Overall, not bad. If I remember correctly, ELA, not as quite as strong as the ELA, with only 5 grade levels at or above the county average. But you also look at the fact, in my 2nd year, we put in a new math program. So we've been pretty busy in that. So 3 through 5, we've been putting that in. And then also last year was the first year that the middle school as well taught the Big Ideas math program. So so you're looking at 3 through 8 basically. Those scores are with 2 years and 1 year of both having new curriculums, and there's always a learning curve when you put that in. Rarely do you see scores go up in a year or two after putting in a new curriculum and stuff like that, because they usually go down quite a bit actually, because there's a learning curve for teachers as they're trying the new materials and trying to figure things out. And we're still tweaking things and trying to improve things with the curriculum and getting the resources correctly. And the high school this is their first year with a new curriculum up there that hadn't been updated in over 10 years, or around 10 years. So with new materials, new math books and that, and I just was having a conversation with Mr. Wolf and working on getting that in there, and getting it in place last night. Or was that, yeah, it was last night, wasn't it? No. Yes. It was last night. It was last night. So, so we're working on that. Some other things to look at. We're always busy. Never a dull moment in Oxford. All grade levels are above the state average again. Three grade levels above 2015-16 scores, 4th, 6th, and 9th. But 4 grade levels were within 4 percentage points of last year's scores. You know, there's a certain amount of variance in the test and stuff like that, so you have to be careful with reading too much in it, even though they might not improve. But if they were slightly down just a little bit, a percentage or two, you're talking maybe 5, 10 kids that maybe were proficient the year before. That is the difference when you're talking 330 kids and stuff like that. A percentage point, it's not very many. It's well, a percentage would be what, about 3 kids. So anyways, so a little bit more than that, about 12 kids. So it's one of those things you want to be careful with making too many assumptions or going too far too fast with anything. And that's where that local assessment data comes in, because we want to make sure that we're justified in where we're going with the results and how we're reading them. One of the things is data can do great good, but it can also do great harm. Okay? And so you want to be careful with that, because there's been more than one mistake made with people reading data wrong or making assumptions based on the data and making changes before they should have. All but 3 cohorts stayed within 4 percentage points of the previous year's proficiency. 5th, 10th, and 11th grade cohorts were the exception. So basically the same idea, looking at how they progressed. Most of them were within 4 percentage points of where they were the previous year, 5th, 10th, and 11th. And so I think some of that is probably working on the new math program. But then at this point, it's one of those things where we want to look at our assessments and start digging in a little bit deeper and see what's going on. Okay?
I just think that was the one concern I had, was the SAT 11th grade math scores. Like, I looked at all the scores combined. That was just, to me, like a real critical area that jumped out. And I was just wondering, maybe we could hear about how you were addressing that at the high school and doing that item analysis. Is it just something about the progression of our kids in the classes they're taking, or?
Well, it could be. I mean, we're looking at and trying to figure out where exactly where the issues are. One of the things is we do have the accelerated track. When I looked at the accelerated track and the accelerated kids, they tended to score roughly, they were always proficient or advanced. They didn't seem to have any issues in that regard. They didn't maybe score as high, I would think, maybe in like Heart of Algebra, but that was because they'd had it previously, but they were always proficient and they were always advanced. Now the issues where you run into is, and that's the group that usually takes geometry in 8th grade, okay? The issue that you run into then is that next group with the algebra and that algebra 1, taking that in 8th grade. They tended to be on the border. You had more kids that were not proficient than what I would have thought would have been. And I think over the last year or two, we've really slowed that track down. We do not have as many kids going through Algebra 1 in 8th grade as we've had previously, trying to give them more time to shore that up. It is one thing that we're always getting pushback from parents. Parents seem to always want to be in a hurry to get someplace with their children. What they don't realize is, you know, like we've got a few kids that are going into advanced math classes even earlier. And you know, it's like they're going to be signing up for like Calc 2 when they get up to a senior. It's like you don't realize how rare of an individual it takes to do those type of classes, especially in college and especially in high school. So we are trying to kind of pull that back a little bit. And like I said, we pulled that back. So looking at that tracking piece, that should be taken care of. Of course, that's going to take a while to go through. When I was principal, I started backing it down, and then with Mrs. Beasley, we went even further. But that's going to take a couple of years for them to get through. So the high school has done item analysis the last couple of years. The SAT gives us great information, and the PSAT 10 both give a great item analysis that we've been using. We just adopted a new curriculum with big ideas. The high school administration has helped in making sure that gets put in place, and that teachers are using the resources, and that we also have the PLCs, the professional learning communities that we have in place as well, and trying to shore that up as well. I would say I was looking at it today, and while the state, see, the SAT is a lot more consistent. If you look at the state averages, the state was, you know, said they went up overall, I think like 6 points, but when you broke it down to math and evidence-based reading and writing, the scores were actually, I think, within 1/10 of what they were the previous year. Our scores in both ELA, or the evidence-based reading and writing, and math went up at the high school. I think at the high school they went up, and it doesn't speak well for last year's math scores, but in the same regard, they are trending in the right direction. It's just a small sample size. So they actually went up, I think it was like 16 points in that test, and then the ELA also went up about 16 or 18 points, somewhere around there. So roughly, so you see it trending in the right direction. They are doing the item analysis, I believe, gentlemen, and Mrs. Krieger here as well. I don't see her, but you did it this year as well too. Have you looked at the SAT data already, I believe, at the beginning of the year? And so the math department is using that data to try to figure out some things that we can do. One of the things I know that we had discussed was making sure that those advanced kids review some of the algebra concepts. It's kind of silly, but really a lot of this stuff is they don't use it. When you get into some of these math concepts, I mean, if you think back on your own practice, unless you're an engineer or in some other type of these professions, you're not using a lot of these things on a day-to-day basis. Even in, like, you know, in Algebra 2, you may not be using a lot of the Algebra 1 concepts, and you forget some of the formulas and some of the steps and whatnot. So like what some of the advanced math teachers are looking at reviewing some of those basic algebra concepts and helping that out as well too. I mean, we also have some things in place, like we do teach Algebra 2 over 2 years, which that seems to, you know, that's slowing it down for that track a little bit and making sure they're a little more solidified. But we are doing those steps to try to make sure that those math scores continue to rise.
We invested a lot of money in math curriculum last year, right? So this is the
Yeah.
first year?
This will be the first year. They rewrote the skeleton of it. They still have to go back through and plug in some of the teaching resources because they just piloted it last year. And so we're going to be working on that, just kind of filling in. But you did approve the math curriculum as it's written, which is that's the part that's like the IB, the overall view, when we're teaching the standards, how they're bundled together. That part's all set. Now they just got to go in and tie in some of the resources, the activities and stuff like that. And so they'll be working on that as they get familiar with the materials. The materials have a lot of MTSS or RTI strategies embedded within them. They also has an online component, so if I go home, you can look up videos, you can also get the textbook online, and so hopefully if at some point, if we're able to go with more devices in that, we can become more of a blended learning environment where you can tailor some more things just to the child. So we do have a lot of things in place and a lot of things working on. Is there anything high school that I should, that I forgot or you want to add?
Illuminate's great, which we've used for our formative assessments, and you can dissect a lot of the data down from that and get it imported in, and then dissect it and create reports. But also the assessment portal within College Board, I think provides a lot of great insights in terms of doing the item analysis. So what specifically, from a standards standpoint, are we deficient or proficient or demonstrating mastery with? At the end of the day, though, there are a few factors I think to put into consideration. One that you pointed out, Ken, kids may have long gone past some of those different standards and some of those learning objectives 4 years ago, 3 years ago. But you also have to understand the format of the test, and that can be a learning curve. So when you look at PSAT 10, the next year PSAT 11, while it's a strikingly similar test, it's a different test. So if you look at that dip in the score, that's something to consider with that learning curve of understanding how to take the test. And we don't teach students to the test, and we never will. We teach students to the content and the standards and their growth, but you have to spend time revisiting that, whether it's warm-ups, exit tickets, and practice some of the algebraic problem solving and some of those basics that you have gone far beyond, but now we need to, at some expense, step back and practice.
And we have given kids the access to PrepWorks.
Yes.
Correct? I mean, has that gone out?
PrepWorks, we link the Khan Academy with them. We make sure every kid has linked their Khan Academy to their College Board account. So whatever practice they have done on either a practice test or a real test, Khan Academy will actually tailor a specific test for them. We mentioned it at Parent Night the other night. Our math department, probably more than any other department, has really gone into that data analysis, item analysis, and found out this year with their SLOs are really finding what are the common issues of the bubble kids. So the kids that if they just get one more question right, 2 more questions right, really has a significant impact. What are the common trends in that heart of algebra piece, and how do they attack a problem? How do they break it down? And every one of the courses has that as part of their student learning objectives that they can assess throughout the year.
And that's really key to try to address those kids that are on the bubble. Those are the easiest to move. Many times we tend to try to focus right away. We get drawn to the kids on the other end. We have interventions in place for that. We have reach classes. We have the math lab class and a few other things in place as well too to try to address those children, because you definitely need to address their needs and everything. But you also need to make sure that with those tier 1 classroom instructions and teachers and that you're hitting that tier 1 instruction stuff, because there's things that they can tweak. Oakland Schools, which I'm also working with for trying to shore up some of our other interventions and so forth in MTSS. You know, they like to say that you can't tier your way, which means interventions out of MTSS or RTI, and that really is, you need your classroom teachers. They make the biggest impact. The interventions help, and they help kids and stuff, but they take a lot of time and a lot of effort over time to get those in place. That's not a quick fix, whereas a lot of these children, addressing them in the classroom right at point of need, can address them really quick and really easily. And it just takes a little bit of finding who they are and recognizing that, and then addressing that in the class, and the teachers are getting better all the time. That's one of the things we're trying to do, to drive that data instruction. In the high school, the middle school, everybody's trying, we're really starting to push on that and get better. It's part of our student growth. And I'll be presenting on the student growth and the changes that we made, which I think are very positive, very encouraging, and really help that exploration and try and get teachers to share instructional practices as well as discuss the kids and trying to move that forward. So I'll be trying to get that presentation together for you as well too for next time. So there's that, and then also as well too, we do offer them the PrepWorks, which a lot of times is supported sometimes with the teacher, or you can have your child go through it. PrepWorks is an online SAT preparatory class that can help and do the ELA and the math, and so we give that option for parents. It does cost, but it is something that can, they guarantee that they can help your scores as well too. So that is something that we give as well. So I think we're doing a lot to try to help things out, and I'm hoping over the next couple of years. It's not something you wave a wand, as you know, and they're all fixed, but I think it's trending in the right direction, and I think we've got really great people up at the high school that will, and also at the middle school, because it's not just, because like algebra is taught down at, in algebra 2, or not algebra 2, but geometry are both taught down at the middle school. It takes everybody.
Thank you. So, I know this is not the vast majority of the students, and you're talking about, teaching in the classroom. I'm glad I don't teach to the test, but we also have Krista Price's Collegiate Transitions class. Just wondering if we're going to take a look, if we can cohort any of that data to show, is it better to have a class on site, and how effective that is at scores and increasing scores versus the prep works, and just do some comparison data. Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility. We do have to go back and look and see, because we ran it last year. I don't believe the class had enough children to sign up this year. I can't,
One section.
One section?
We had 2 sections last year, 1 section this year.
Okay, so-
That ends up being difficult because the kids who take that course, I mean, it's a unique population. So those are the ones who really focus on test scores. And they have room in their schedule, where a lot of our upper end kids don't necessarily have that room in their schedule because of their schedules. I mean, you're familiar with the IB, I know. So it wouldn't be for an IB kid or a kid who wants to take that extra art class. So it's the motivation for that particular piece, plus the availability in their schedule, which is why the PrepWorks comes in really well, where they can take it outside the day, they can take it as an online class during the day, where it fits with all of their singletons and any other track that they may or may not be on.
I think I'm interested in knowing if it works, like,
Oh, yeah.
comparatively. I'm just interested in looking at.
Yeah. And that class focused because with Krista, and they're more of the ELA, and so it really focused heavily more on that, and then it is some things obviously with the math as well too. I mean, one of the ideas that we have moving forward is that if we can get 2 sections, is to get one by ELA, one by math, and we had talked with the high school administration about this, but unfortunately we didn't have quite enough kids, and then have them switch, so that then the math teacher comes into the other class, and the ELA teacher comes into the other one, so that you're making sure you're addressing the needs of all the kids and so forth. So that's something we're going to be looking at as well too down the road. Yeah, because it would be interesting to see which one kind of does what. I have my own child right now doing PrepWorks, so.
Yeah, and my son's actually doing collegiate transitions, and what I'm interested in with that is the skills that are, part of that class, which is more than just like the test scores. It's the test anxiety reduction. It's the opportunity to take a look at what's in the test, but also just test-taking skills in general.
Yeah.
So he's my own research project to see if that's going to work.
Well, maybe we can have you come back and report. But yeah, like Mr. Wolf alluded to in that, there's a difference between PSAT 10 and the SAT, and then but there's distinct test-taking strategies that are not teaching to the test, but are good strategies that all kids should have and take advantage of as well too, because other kids are doing that. And kids are going back and taking it several times, and they're figuring out there's certain things that you want to do.
Thank you.
Jenner? Are you doing any type of comparison, or are you noticing the grades are also following those test scores? And then we talk about not teaching to the test, but are you, if we look at scores that are going up, are the grades going from C average to a B average to an A average?
Grades are a hard thing to kind of really get a hold of, because although teachers have gotten way better from when we were in school, and so forth, and even up to 5-10 years ago, they've gotten a lot better. But there was a lot of stuff that should have never been in grading, extra credit stuff, that then, it convolutes the grade at that point. There's things as far as like turning in late homework, whether or not the teacher accepted it or not, and stuff like that, that would then get penalized, and so did the kid learn the material stuff. So grades are very hard to kind of correlate. We didn't have grades in Illuminate. I mean, Illuminate is huge, and there's only so much you can do in a year. We are putting grades in now this year. We're going back and putting the old grades in, and we will have that capability. That's the one thing nice about Illuminate, is that you can have your SAT data in there, and then you can look at grades and GPA, and now you can start to see a correlation. Before then, to try to maneuver all of that would have been a very difficult task and pretty hard. I just don't have the people. It's basically me and Sean in my office pumping out of this stuff. So we're doing the best we can. So there's not any way we could do that. But now with Illuminate, and we're getting that in, and it was a simple setup, and then we had to have time to understand how to do that in the back end, we can then import the grades, and now we can start looking at that. Okay? Yeah, and the administrators, I mean, they're always looking at different things. They pull things up that they have, that they like. They go into Illuminate, or they go into the different, the secure site, which is where the tests are located, the data and stuff, and they look at it as well too. And then they have their teachers looking at the data. So. Yep. But that would be a good correlation and one we want to do look at, and that's one of the reasons why we're putting the grades in, is to see if that is following and where that's at, and see if we can see anything from that. Science. Now, science is interesting. Science is, you know, the state test is, the cut score on this is set ridiculously high, at least in my opinion, humble opinion. You know, back when the MEP and then when they set up the MSTEP, they went through and they basically thought that what they did was they set the cut scores basically off what a student going into college with their first year, after their first year of college as a science major would score, and then they worked backwards from there to figure out what that cut score would be all the way, and then set that for the bar for all kids. Well, part of it was they thought if maybe if scores were a little bit lower, that maybe they'd get more funding and so forth. All it has done is just, I think for the most part, not made for a very good press publication. They are changing the science tests this year in 2018, 17-18, in the spring of 2018. It will be a pilot of items from the Michigan Science Standards, the new NGSS. We don't call them NGSS because anything national gets a bad rap. So we call it the Michigan Science Standards, but they're basically the NGSS adopted with a few things carved out of it, but yet they're still supporting documents. So it's a new test this year. So this is the last year for the old test. It's really, it tests the 3 grades below it. And so as you look at the data, you can realize that's not just 4th grade being tested, but it is also 3rd and 2nd grade. 2nd grade tests the grades below that as well too. So you can see our test results here. All grade levels at or above the county average, which that was very impressive. All grade levels are above it at the state average, or above the state average, sorry. All grade levels are above the 2015-16 scores. I didn't go back and compare cohorts because it just doesn't make sense to do that with such a test such as the MSTEP. Okay. It will still be called the MSTEP next year, but it'll be an interesting test. I'm really excited to see what they do with it. It's going to be an extremely rigorous test. Social studies. Social studies is kind of in limbo. Mr. Noose, as well as a former social studies teacher, may have more information than I do at this point. They were looking at changing the standards. They never really did. It's been in limbo. They haven't been able to move on them. And so I've been really reluctant to kind of start addressing social studies because I'm not sure where the state is going. I keep hearing rumors every once in a while that they're going to come turn around and change the standards. Mostly the effect would be K-8, and mostly, quite honestly, is K-5. And a little 7th grade as well too, K-7. So we'll have to see where that goes. But right now the test is still going to stay the same and still be administered. Now this year, the grades that will be tested, it will be 5th and 8th grade and 11th grade. Same thing with science, will be 5th, 8th, and 11th. So you're going to have your 5th graders and 8th graders taking now, 11th graders are used to it. They take science and social studies, and then they take the SAT, which does the ELA and math. But your 5th and 8th graders this year will be taking science, social studies, ELA, and math for the first time. Now the good news is for the other grades, they're only taking ELA and math. Looking at these scores, you see 2 grade levels are above the county average, 8th and 11th. You see all grade levels are above the state average, and 2 grade levels are above the 2015-16 scores, 8th and 11th. And you saw pretty good gains, I think, in both of those areas for both the 8th and 11th grade in both science and social studies. So, what questions may you have? This is it. Oh, I forgot. Oh, the SAT. Oh my heavens. Yeah, here we go. Sorry. What does that have?
This is the one I like, Ken.
All right. So below the county average, this is an area of work to do. Especially since 3 through 8, you see that we're trending above the county average for the most part. So SAT, we're above the state average, but quite honestly with our demographics, that is not the bar that we want to shoot for. We're above the 2015-16 score, while the state average stayed within single digits. Oops, too fast.
You go back to that one?
Yeah, there you go. There you go, sir.
Does anybody have any questions on that? Go ahead.
I just think that the whole math component, we'll just bring that up overall. Like if we really focus on math, like the high school's really focusing on, it's gonna prevent that score.
Could you go back to the math one for a second? I just want
Yeah.
to show you something. Probably already know it. What's interesting about the math scores, if you compare them to the state of Michigan, is the state of Michigan in general plummets during the middle grades. They plummet. We excel. And we excel, and it may be because we're doing advanced stuff around that grade 8. But then, look what the state of Michigan does in the upper grades. They more than catch up. They exceptionally advance while we decline. That would tell me that it's kids are not remembering something they learned 3 grades ago. There's the stuff they're not using, where the rest of Michigan is using it in the classroom, and so when they took the test, oh yeah, I just did that a month ago. And that screams out to me that look at what the whole state of Michigan does. They go from the 30s to the 40s, upper 30s, and we go from in the mid 50s and plummet, or low 50s and plummet. I don't know, it's interesting.
And you can, Ken, where did we start the interventions last year?
Well, we started in K2, quite honestly. Now, they've mostly been focused on ELA because of the reading and writing in the 3rd grade and so forth. And our math scores, like was pointed out, is 3 through 8 is pretty strong. And that really the work has to be done at the 9th through 11th and looking at that process. And so we're just really, I think, beginning that. I think the first step was putting in the curriculum. We have to see what that does. Teachers were, they did a great job with what the resources they had, but we adopted a curriculum in 2007 or 8, and math books and so forth. The standards changed in 2010, and we didn't adopt any new curriculum in grades 3 through 12. We are actually K through 12, basically. The elementary basically had an updated version of EDM, which basically they took stickers and slapped it on the old stuff and said, here you go, it's all Common Core now. Even though despite things did move, it was not exactly in alignment to previous math. Now math did not change as much as maybe ELA did, but it still changed some. And then as well, then 6 through 12, we were using very old textbooks that were not necessarily aligned, and then teachers were piecing things together and doing the best that they could with worksheets and putting things together. So before I go too fast and too far with making too many changes structurally and so forth, I want to make sure that we have kids in a guaranteed and viable curriculum that are getting the same resources, and so that we can sit down and we can start looking and seeing where exactly the issues are. But until we kind of dive into that a little bit more and we have that part settled, and then we can start using Illuminate to see where things are, then we can start making adjustments and start making the tweaks that we need to make and see where we need to go.
Go ahead.
Okay. How often do we change the curriculum? Do we have kind of a set standard?
Yeah, we have a schedule now.
Is that state mandated, or is that?
No, it's not state mandated. I mean, it's mandated you keep your curriculum current, and that the Board of Ed is responsible for that in the sense that it all has to go through the Board of Ed.
Right. But how
For
often do we
approval.
change it?
About every 7 years or so, unless they change the standards on us. I have a schedule in my office that hangs there that I try to keep by, because I have to balance also. I can't come with all 7 years worth in 1 year, because we don't have a budget for all that. So I have to kind of stagger things. And so I have things staggered. This year, we're working on 9th through 12th ELA. We're also working on science. We've been working on science for a while because their change is huge. Their change is not something you can just put on your finger on, because it's really more a philosophical change. It will change some of the standards and some of the course sequencing at the high school level. That'll have some impact there, but it's going to be more so in how the teacher presents the material and how they interact with the children and how they're teaching them. That's going to be a huge change for them. So that's something we've been working on with Mr. Spencer and the administrations at the buildings. They're going to be going through training here in a week or two. Mr. Spencer, who's also a NGSS, or Michigan Science Standard trainer, will be putting us through the pace, so to speak, as we're going to go through a modified presentation of materials and trust, so we can understand what the changes are. So basically, though, we have a schedule set up, and I think it's about every 7 or 8 years. When you throw in all the different electives and everything else, trying to balance everything out, it ends up being, because you also got K-5 versus 6-12, and then trying to have things so that they flow through, so that it's not, you're doing this up here, and then this is going here. So you want to know what the lower level's doing, so that you don't necessarily have to adopt the exact same resource, but you want to keep that in mind as you adopt the resources as you move up. Because the kids are moving up.
Great.
So we are trying to get that piece straightened out. I'm really excited about that. I think that once the teachers get into that, like with everything, change is it's difficult, but they were on board with it and happy, and I think they were very pleased when we looked at the discussion, and we had a discussion in deciding which materials to go with. The deciding vote was unanimous for the big ideas. So it seems to be a very excellent product. The middle school's been on it. They've had some pretty good success. And so we're continuing to move forward with that.
Thank you.
Anything else? I guess now what questions may you have?
I wanted more of a comment than a question, Ken. You kind of went through that last slide really quick.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were nervous of the numbers, but I just want to point out
No,
observation.
just didn't want to. Nervous more of the time. I was getting evil-eyed by the superintendent. So.
Oh, exactly. Nudging them down below, that's okay. I think it's important to point out this, that we need to look at it from a historical point of view. I mean, 2016, our SAT score was 1,016. State average is 1,001. So we're 15 points higher than the state average in 2016. Forward to 2017, we're 1,044, where the state is at 1,007.6. It's 37-point increase over the state average. You know, you said it earlier,
Yeah.
Oakland County is the highest achieving.
It's not the highest, but it is
It's
one.
one of the higher achieving districts, counties that we deal with. The 1,054, when these numbers first came out, I called Tim and I said, look where we're at and look where some of the schools that surround our borders are. We have closed the gap tremendously. So although it's important for us to kind of look at these numbers and where the trends are, that's what they do and that's our responsibility. I want everybody to understand that the gap has been closed, and it's been closed with the hard work of the staff, and you know, the board just takes either the bad or the good, whatever comes along with it, but that's where it gets done, is in the trenches with the staff and everybody. So I want to thank you, Ken, and everybody else for really taking a look at where the data presented itself, that we needed to shore up things a couple of years ago. I think it's starting to pay off. So that was important numbers to me.
Yeah, and I thought I'd put on, that's why I was flipping back, was you could really see, and I remember I just stuck with the proficient numbers, and then if you really look at the numbers for the math and for the evidence-based reading and writing, you really see a nice jump, that you already see that they, we had discussed this, went up to the high school last year, they really started, you know, they embraced Mr. Newsom, led them through some activities last year, and that they really jumped in, started looking at their data, started trying to address some of these issues, both the ELA The high school's had a literacy effort now for the last 2 years, at least, probably 3, 4. And, you know, it takes some time to kind of get these in place, and so they've really concentrated on some close reading strategies and really trying to push that along, and we really had a nice jump this year in the evidence-based reading and writing, and then math as well had a nice little jump as well too. So the high school needs to be, yes, it's one of those things, we still got a lot of work to cut out for us, and we're working on it in that, but also they need to be commended and realize that they already made a nice jump this year, and very proud of them. So I think that's
Very much so. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
well, thank you.
Okay. Item 7, Finance and Operations, Mr. Barna.
Good evening, everyone. On your list here is the irrigation supply project for OHS. Back in June, Tony and I submitted this on BidNet, which is basically a consortium to get out your bids. It was sent to over 100 companies. An attempt to project this out for a water main rather than the current well that we have right now as an irrigation supply to our ball fields, our athletic fields here. And so that was out for a little over 2 weeks. The bids came back, or I should say singular, the bid came back with one company.
Only one?
Only one, yeah. So I think that just shows you how well the economy is going at this particular point. The base bid amount was $82,470. That did exceed at the time our total budget for the project. We had the budget pegged at tentatively between $60,000 and $75,000. And so both Tony and I were a little bit, we were disappointed for sure, and we were a little bit surprised that we only had one bidder. So what Tony did after that, after receiving that bid, is he met with our engineer on the project, which is Spalding de Decker, and their chief engineer, and they value engineered the bid, or I should say more specifically, the project and the drawings, to try to reduce the run for the water main and hence reduce the costs as well. And it's not just the run of the water main, but it's also the components that were put together in the base bid to begin with. So, Tony, I don't know if I want to kind of...
No, everything you said is correct, and then what we did was we put it out to the bidder as an addendum, and he went back and he repriced it, and we sat down with him and went through the whole scope of work, and we found that we could get significant savings, which brings us down to the 48.5 number, which that's a huge savings on that.
Keep in mind, what's not on here are permit fees that we would still have to pay to the township, in addition to, I believe the pump is not included as well. Is that
We're going to
correct?
do the pump in-house. Yeah, that would save us on it. There's a little booster pump that's going to be located down where the old controller was. So we're going to bore in a 4-inch line to that enclosure down there. We'll have a new enclosure up by the PAC. We'll bore that down, that's up by the PAC, that's going to be where the meter and the backflow preventer will be located. Then that 4-inch will be bored down to that location down there, and then we'll pick it up and we put a small booster pump. What that will allow us to do, right now we can only run one zone at a time. We have 22 zones on those fields. We're going to be able to run multiple zones. So instead of running one at a time, we're going to be able to run 3 or 4 with it down there.
And for those of you who aren't aware, because either you're newer to the board, this project has been in the conception stage for a number, probably well over a year now. And
About a year.
one of the main, about a year?
Yeah.
One of the main reasons why that we're having this issue with the current well is the acidic nature of the water itself within the well. And so unfortunately, it does more harm than good to the athletic fields.
It's not acidic, there's chlorides.
I'm sorry, chlorides. I
Chlorides.
apologize.
So it's one of the salts on the well. And it's the well's failing and the groundwater quality is poor.
Back reason.
Did you get references from the one company that submitted it?
I don't believe I have references that we required in the bid itself. Tony, do
I'm
you?
familiar with the company, they're a local company.
It's a Metamora.
They have done work for us in the past.
Okay, that
They've
was my
done work with the
concern.
township and with the county.
Perfect.
They're very
They're
well
a
known.
small company, they're reputable.
Okay, thank you.
Within the bid, though, I didn't get any like letters of
I was just afraid
reference.
because there's only one person bidding that we just want the bid.
Sure.
Oh, no, if he was an unknown, absolutely not.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, he is known.
He's a known person, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Stecker?
Yeah, this is gonna get hooked into the school's water main?
There's a loop that goes around the building, an inch main.
But it's
It's not-
Detroit water.
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
The water is
Okay.
all on wells in Oxford.
Okay, so.
The WRC maintains the wells and the water system for the township.
Okay,
And what we're gonna do is, we're not gonna tap inside the building, we couldn't do that. The
but we're still using that source though?
Yes, we are. The water that's coming off the
Okay.
water tower outside,
Yeah,
that's the water source that we're gonna be using.
all right, so my question then becomes, now that we're gonna irrigate with that water as opposed to groundwater, is that gonna be a huge expense?
Well, there's a certain amount of expense that goes with having the well and, operating the well and everything. But the water quality is poor.
Yeah.
You've got these chlorides in the water, it's like,
I know, but I'm
it's
just,
never gonna get it grow. So, right now, we currently irrigate the fields behind the middle school. That's all irrigated with, well, now it is township water, but it was village water.
okay,
And behind OE, that's all irrigated off the
That's
village
just-
water at that time. And those fields look great,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know, the thought would be, because overall, if you have good groundwater, that's a cheaper way to go, is to have a well.
Oh, absolutely.
So my thought is, if we're 100 feet down on where our well is,
Well, the volumes,
you drill a different well and deeper maybe, or?
the volumes that we have to do when you do it, actually, the well that's out there right now is a 6-inch plastic casing.
Okay,
It's got a 30 horsepower pump. It's 200 feet deep. It was designed to produce 230 gallons per minute. It never made that. It did in the beginning and it slowly diminished. We were lucky to get 100 gallons. per
but it depends where the head is.
That's
You
where the
be
head
down
is. There's a certain amount of head, and it's got a certain amount of drawdown, and a
Yeah.
certain amount that it's got to produce. It's been failing for a long time.
Yeah.
And with all that weight from the pitless, the pump, and the draw rod that's on it, it actually was putting a tremendous amount of pressure on that plastic casing. It should have never been a plastic casing.
Right.
It should have been a steel casing. So I priced it up with an 8-inch steel well that would probably, wells are hit and miss. Some of them are good, some are bad, even though we still have bad water. Just to drill the well and put an 8-inch case in there is over $50,000.
Okay.
And put another pump in there that would be, to be able to get those kind of volumes, 230 gallons a minute, that we were talking about another 20 grand. And then you
Okay.
put another controller in there, and it was like, we're putting all
But
this.
those are
tremendous amount-
one-time costs though, too.
Well, it is, but you still don't have the water quality.
Well, yeah, I don't know, you'd have to find the water quality first.
Yeah, you're not gonna, and the problem with the aquifer here is it's all glacial overburden, and I got a feeling the water that's, located out and we're drilling off of is, they're having other problems in the area, and a lot
Yeah.
of people are changing over to the township water.
Township water,
Yeah.
yeah, all right. So I have well water, and I don't even need to treat it, it's so good.
I do too, where I live, it's
Yeah.
perfect, I just put a softener on it, and it's great, some of them are good, some are bad.
Right.
There's arsenics, we have, problems with arsenics, not that that's an issue with the irrigation well,
Right,
but just because of the chloride, it's caused a huge problem.
Gotcha. okay. So you did think about it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. That's what I was getting at. All right.
Mr. Donnelly?
I'd just like to follow up on Mr. Steffi's question. Having thought about it, what is the estimated annual water bill cost to run that sprinkler system through the new system?
We don't know what the volume would be and how.
You can estimate volume.
Yeah,
What's the cost going to be?
we haven't done that, at least I have not done that.
So it's like an open check at that moment. I mean, is it $50,000 a year? Is it? $18,000 a year?
Sure.
There's a cost to that.
Oh, absolutely there is, because obviously you're paying the township depending on the RUs or the volume amount that's going through the meter.
Because that's, you're just asking for approval for one thing, but there's a whole other thing hanging out there.
Yeah, absolutely, no, agree that there needs to be that done.
Okay.
Okay, further question? We are not taking action on this, correct?
No, just a discussion item, that's all.
I would say that based on the questions that came up, I think it's pretty clear that if by next time we take a vote on this, before we vote on it, if we could have
Oh, definitely.
cost.
We'll actually get with the township and develop an estimate based upon a typical usage in a given year. Maybe that we see, you know.
Yeah, you know, 1,000 gallons,
Yeah.
2,000 gallons.
Yeah.
It's all, you know, weather driven. I mean,
Absolutely.
We have some Junes are nicer than others, we're gonna have a warm September, you know, it just depends. And then, of course, we're probably gonna water more during, you know, the fall seasons and stuff like that. But one advantage to having it where we can get the proper volume to run multiple zones, we're gonna be able to irrigate at the proper times. So in the evenings, when it's not as hot, and we can run multiple zones, and we're gonna run this, you know, we're gonna run the sprinklers for 4 hours. Instead of right now, I'm running almost 24 hours a day. During the heat of the summer, we start at, you know, 9 o'clock at night, we run till 8 in the morning, and then we try to keep pumping. So, you know, it never gets proper coverage. So if we can, you know, set up a 4-hour watering cycle, we can cover everything. And we can see where we're gonna, you know, where we're getting our greatest advantage is on our fields. The fields that grow better than the other fields, you know, we can back off of those fields, we can set it all up. So we're gonna minimize our usage, I would imagine, compared to what we were doing with the well. Because the well, even though I'm producing that, you know, 100 gallons a minute, you know, let's say we were doing that and you're running it for all those, that's a lot of water. It's not gonna be the same kind of usage, so we'll sit down and we'll figure it out.
We have to get our math kids in on this.
It's gonna be a program, yeah.
The other thing too is what's the cost difference between water and electricity? If you're running it for 12, 13, 14 hours straight, electricity, I believe, is more cost per unit than, you know, water. So I mean, not to add more math to the equation, but
It's a factor, because
It's
with
a factor.
a 30 horsepower pump, what does that run off of? Is it 220 or 480?
I think ours down there is 220, but it might be 480.
Yeah.
It's a 3-phase one. Yeah.
3-phase, yeah.
okay. So I think you guys got a pretty good idea of what
Yeah.
we're kind of looking for, and appreciate the information.
Can I ask you a
Yes.
question? I do have a question, actually. I'm sorry in advance for asking this as your treasurer, but can you help us understand, if you haven't already, what fund, how to put this in perspective with where the money is, what fund is the money coming out of, and how is this addressed, if it's addressed by the bond or not?
No, yeah, that's a great question, and no, this is not addressed by the bond or the sinking fund. We budgeted this originally in the general fund last year, but because of the timing and the delay and putting it out to bid, we decided to move this into the capital project fund. So that's where this is budgeted as a $75,000 line item for 2017-18.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 8, Human Resources, Mrs. Witkowski.
Good evening. The board approved in the consent agenda 3 employee hires. Meredith Servanac, who is a social worker at middle school in Olga, and Graham Hanna, middle school Spanish teacher. And then we also appointed Christy Setterstad for assistant principal at the middle school. So we have some great recommendations here and appreciate your approval. And we're very pleased to fill those positions.
Congratulations again, Christy.
Thank you.
All smiles up there. All right.
Now we have to hire a dean of
I was going to ask.
students. Just keeps going. We're in the process.
So we have a couple more positions yet to fill.
Yeah, we've had some long-term positions that we've had to fill, and several other support staff positions, and it was kind of an ongoing thing.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Student Services, Ms. Sweet.
I believe in your board package, there was an update to the attendance policy. There was a minor tweak. We have a 5-step attendance policy, so there was a change from, it was at 21 or more consecutive days, the district made a referral to truancy, and that's now changed to 19 or more consecutive days, and that's just to be in alignment with change in state and federal guidelines. So that's the change to the policy. We're currently still working through some changes to the guidelines, the attendance guidelines. So we're meeting with elementary principals tomorrow. So guidelines are board approved, but just to keep you updated.
All right, thank you. Item 10, board policy. A motion? Ms. Schaefer.
Move to approve the first reading of policy number 5200, attendance is presented.
Support? Support, Ms. Guthrie. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item 11, unscheduled audience participation. Just all smiles. It's the first couple weeks of school. Everybody's still smiling. Ken, you want to take another stab at it? Good. All good. Yes. Clarification. We have some scheduled activities, and we're going to move one of them. I think there needs to be a motion made. The September 19th meeting, superintendent quarterly review, which is scheduled for September 19th at 6:30 at the board office. Mr. Throne will be at a SUPS convention, a conference. He offered to drive back from Traverse City to come for his review and then drive back for the remainder. I didn't think that that was a very good use of his time nor the resources of the district, so we're going to move that to another day. Actually, we're going to cancel that. We're going to, the September 19th meeting, and we're going to move his review to a mutually agreed upon time. So I'm going to need a motion to cancel the September 19th meeting. Ms. Guthrie?
I move to cancel the September 19th meeting.
I'll second.
Support, Mr. Steppett. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We also have another item as it pertains to board meetings on November 7th. And I don't necessarily think we need to have a motion today, but I just want to let everybody know that November 7th meeting is election night. I don't think it's, I don't know if appropriate is not the word, but I don't think we're going to have a meeting on November 7th. We're going to try to move that to either the 6th, which is Monday, or the 8th, which is Wednesday. So if you could all take a look at your calendars and give me your preference, I'll relay that to Pat, and then we'll make that known at our next meeting, and I think we'll need to make an agenda motion at that point.
Just FYI, our booster meetings are always first Mondays of the month, so that'll be that Monday.
Duly noted.
That's all I wanted to do.
Okay, very good. So if you could take a look at your schedules, shoot me an email, and let me know. I would appreciate it if you could do that. Let's just say if we could do that by the end of this week, I can let Pat know, and we can move forward. Item 14, final board comments. Start with Mr. Donlin.
Ken, thank you very much. Fantastic job. Thank you to a fantastic staff.
Mr. Schaefer.
Interesting information on the irrigation. I just learned a whole lot of information about wells. I was like, okay, got all kinds of notes, I don't know what they mean, but I'm gonna work on it later. Great job, Ken. You put a lot of time into the statistics. I know it's not your favorite thing, but you do put a lot of time into it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Welcome back.
Yeah, so Tom and Heather, and also just thanks to our board subcommittee on working on the superintendent contract. I really appreciate the time the subcommittee put in on researching other contracts.
Mr. Bailey?
Just want to thank Ken for the great presentation. One note that I kind of wanted to bring up before, but I noticed that with the math, that you were really high during the middle school grades, and you touched on some of the extra things the teachers were doing. Speaking also as part parent here, 99% of that is your teachers. And I can tell you myself, my daughter spent many lunches sitting with the math teachers, science teachers during lunch. I mean, they were giving up so much time. The communication that would get sent home to me saying, hey, this is the way you learn math, this is the way we're teaching it, here's some pointers. I mean, without getting into too much trouble, Miss Stitzel, Miss McDonough, they're worth their weight in gold. I mean, my daughter is flying through math, and it's 100% of them. So, thank you.
Take 2 minutes like crazy. I want to say great news on the M-STEP scores, which kind of period. Great news. I think that's great news, and I like the fact that we're closing the gap on the SATs. I'm still so very interested in being a data person, but in the potential for assessing what's working. We're not doing anything wrong. We're doing things right. I want to keep building on that. So that's, I think, what I'm really interested in is how are our students prepping? You know, in the classroom, that's where they're prepping. And that's coming through, so I think that new math curriculum is really going to pay off. I think that our teachers work incredibly hard to help set our students up for success in every regard, not just SAT, but for everything they're facing. So I fully believe in that. I'm just so interested to know what that looks like from a success story standpoint.
We'll look into that and see if we can get you some
For future updates. Thanks, and I'll be sure to weigh in on my own research project. I want to second Joyce's thanks for the superintendent subcommittee. Thank you for doing that contract, spending that time. And then thanks to Tony and for Sam on the work on the irrigation supply project. I'll be interested to see what we come back with on that, like how much it takes, electricity, water. Like Heather, overwhelmed with the well information, but that's good learning. I wanted to thank Tim and Dan and Pat. I wanted to thank you guys for, I actually texted Dan and, wait, who did I text? I don't even know. Dan and Tom, to see if they wanted sort of a cheat sheet on the bond so that we could really fully be good resources for our constituency about the bond. And I wanted to say thank you to Tim, especially for everything that you're putting out there about this bond. And I want to know if there's anything that we can do to support you other than knowing and understanding what we need to be able to talk about, because this is a fantastic initiative that will really help our schools and help our students. So thank you so much for that and for your great welcome back letter, which was very motivational. So thank you so much. Okay, so I'll stop there.
Mr. Stepik?
I just echo everything everybody said here tonight. Doesn't need to be said again. Thanks, Ken.
Okay. Ken, all warm and fuzzy. We give you, I think a lot of times, you may think we give you a hard time, but it's just because there's a lot of information to digest, and you take the lion's share of the grunt, and not enough of the credit goes to you and the staff. So, there's always a good curriculum person and a great staff that goes into making what we have as end product. And that goes to Tim and everybody in the ag team and the academy. So it doesn't happen with just one person. It happens with everybody pulling the rope in the same direction. I will say that as a board, we need to be aware of what we can and can't communicate when it comes to the bond. So if you don't know and you have questions, ask before you communicate. There are rules and guidelines on which we can and can't say. So I will leave it at there before I step into one of those potholes. I want to thank Sam and Tony. This has been a long project that, you know, I think it's important for the board to realize that this did not get held up at that table. There's a lot of different moving pieces when you're dealing with the water quality folks, with the county and with the township, and everybody getting on the same page and trying to do it over the summertime and trying to do it at the end of the school year last year. So while it seemed as though it took a long time, I appreciate the work put into it and look forward to moving forward and really taking care of the facilities that we need to take care of. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Throne.
Thank you. I'll just, I don't think I want to say anything more about Mr. Weaver because he's going to have a big enough head as it is already.
I'm trying to bring him down.
Obviously, he doesn't know the look, so I'm going to give him a look what that means. No, I appreciate the work the board continues to do. Just a couple of things. One, in regards to the water and the ball fields, I can tell you that this came to my desk at least 2 years ago. We've had issues with this well for a long time. You know, at one point, I was just like, just put a new well in there, be done with this, because we were trying to get temporary water out there, and we were having parents get upset and coaches get upset because the fields were drying up, and it was just one issue after another, and then we didn't get bids, and it's just, this is like going on forever. So I don't want to like add to it, but I mean, if you really want to like turn this into a project, besides finding out the cost of the annual water and electricity usage, you also could just see what the cost of turf a couple of fields out there would be and what the payoff would be. Is it, you know,
This way.
a 5-year break-even analysis, 8-year, 10-year? So
What's the point of committing?
Step it, move that way. I'm moving this way. And
About
it's
to
been around a while.
about to
that's why I move this
explode.
way.
I'm not saying that we do it, I'm just saying that, you know, if you really want to really take a look at this. So in regards to test scores, I do want to say this, and I think it really goes back to what Corey said. From a system standpoint, we definitely need to make sure that we invest in our curriculum. We take a look at our cycles. We make sure that we're making our changes when we need to make them, that we have proper alignment. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what's happening in those classrooms. And I'm really proud and happy for our teachers in that, you know, pretty much across the board, not everywhere, but pretty much across the board, when you start looking at a trend analysis, and we'll have, after this year, three points on there, the far majority, if not all areas, are trending up. And, you know, that comes back to one of our statements, one of our B's in our culture, and that not only do we want to bring our best today, but we want to continually become our best. And I think our teachers are doing that, our administrators are doing that, and hopefully at the end of the day, our students are doing that. And so I think that's pretty much all I want to say when it comes to test scores. So, yes.
Okay.
I'm done. Oh, one other thing. In regards to the bond, I would encourage board members that a community committee has been formed. They are meeting on Wednesday nights, for the most part out at the Parks and Rec their new community room. I know that a couple of upcoming meetings, they've had to change, and I think it's at the library and that kind of thing. But if you so desire and you want to be involved and really help promote that, I would suggest that's probably the main and best way to really get involved. And I would say that to all of our employees and administrators and community members as well. So,
Is there schedule of those meetings? Somewhere?
there is, last Wednesday was their first meeting, and so originally there was, Wednesdays at 6:30 pretty much, I think, between now and the election in November. So if you have any questions or want any information more on that, you can actually just contact Sam, and he can give that to you directly.
All right, I'm going to add one more thing, since we've discussed it, and to make perfectly clear, although we did mention bond and turf in the same setting, if there's any cost savings, it will go towards what?
Buses.
There we go, buses. So, very good use of the information that we had the other night, and I think it was made crystal clear what our goals in this district are for. And if anybody has the opportunity to get there, by all means do, because the information is very, very good. So with that, we're going to have to gather afterwards, take a group photo, because we're going to have one of this particular group, so we can update the website. So with that, it's great to be a Wildcat. Adjourned.